Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm Ol Silky.
Silky's mouth is full, so give him a moment.
Yeah.
And
How the hell are you?
this is the Snags and Silky podcast. Hip them to what we're talking about tonight.
We're gonna do tonight's episode
Silky's
72.
eating. Oh, there he goes.
Episode 72. David Lee Roth. We obviously did the Van Halen, and we're gonna, we'll probably mention Van Halen throughout, but this is strictly Dave's solo ventures. He was in Van Halen from 74 to 85, and that was a very emotional breakup. And then, so he's done solo stuff since 85 and has retired, but, we still get stuff here and there. But Diamond Dave, just a hellacious, energetic stage persona. I was fortunate enough to catch him a few times live. I know Snags did. But that's tonight's episode 72. Diamond Dave.
So before we launch into it, go to snagsandsilky.com and buy everything. All right. So, we just did 3 intense episodes on probably the band that everybody takes the most seriously on the planet Earth, the Beatles. Very serious stuff, highbrow pop music. And so we got to decompress a little bit. We're going to hang out and just rap about Diamond David Lee Roth a bit. You follow? You dig? So we're going to start off where it all started in Bloomington, Indiana. It was one of those nights in blues songs where the wolf was howling and it was a full moon and there was something wicked this way comes, a weird eerie breeze going through the town. Obviously it had to be one of those nights. It was October 10th, 1954. And Nathan Lee Roth and his wife Sybil had a son. And he was born standing up and talking back. And his name was David Lee Roth. You follow?
Nice.
So he talks about, we're gonna be hitting on this book that we're linking in the Click Pit, Crazy from the Heat. It's an amazing book. This cat basically interviewed David Lee Roth as part of his doctoral thesis, I think, and
oh wow,
was gonna do write it on David Lee Roth, and this is the book basically that came out of that project, and it's just interviews with Dave. So when we start talking about Crazy from the Heat, it's basically Dave's autobiography. It's him talking, and it's just transcripts from interviews with him. It's an amazing book. But he talks in that book about being a young Jewish child in the Midwest, and basically, in his house, education and culture were very important. So he's actually a really well-read cat. If you listen to any long interviews with Dave, and we're going to link 3 of them from the Click Pit. He was on Joe Rogan 2013, 2019, and I think 2021. We'll link all 3 of those on the Click Pit. But you listen to a long interview with Dave, or you read Crazy from the Heat, you realize you're dealing with somebody with a higher than average intellectual capacity, even though he's professionally a clown. And so he talked about the importance of education in his house, and also his experiences with anti-Semitism and, living in the Midwest, and how that kind of shaped his worldview. I think that probably was the beginning of this kind of loner type personality that he has. He's always been a very individualistic person. But he also,
and he's so driven. Everything is just, he's going to get whatever he sets his mind to.
Nobody's going to finish your thought.
He's a very positive force. His songs are positive. His outlook, he does not I think he doesn't stop so that reality doesn't set in, you know. He just keeps going, you know.
He just keeps on shucking and driving.
Yeah, he's just
All right.
always on. James Brown,
Wheeling
some of
and
these
dealing.
guys were always on.
Fucking sucking and trucking.
Yeah.
All right. So he basically, so there's this Midwestern pragmatism about the guy too. He's real. There's a down to earth side to him, and I think he's got a kind of a Midwest sensibility in a way as well. So in his early teens, he moves to California, Pasadena specifically, and this is early '60s, and it's a bit of culture shock, but he very quickly adapts to the West Coast lifestyle. And the high school he went to, he actually lived pretty close to the Van Halen brothers, but he lived, I guess, right across this line or something where he was part of the busing system. So when integration happened, they would bus white kids to black schools and black kids to white schools, and let's mix it up a bit. And the Van Halen kids, I don't know if it was proximity or something, but they ended up going to a school. It was like Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Right.
It was the white high school, but it was very much Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and that was the kind of the that film was made just a few years after Van Halen's were in high school, probably 5, 6, 7 years after, something like that. But Dave is going to school with all the black kids and the Hispanic kids, and he ends up just musically. He's always been into music, and his earliest stuff, he got into like vaudeville and Al Jolson and stuff like that. Probably when he was still.
That's how he always comes off.
Yeah. Oh, Al Jolson's a huge influence. As a kid, when I was in my teens, David Lee Roth was one of my idols. I saw the 1984 tour, and then I saw the next Van Halen tour after that, where they swapped out the backup band, the Eat 'Em and Smile tour. And those were two of the best Van Halen shows I've ever seen. I saw them once again in 2011. That was a pretty good show too. But Eat 'Em and Smile and 1984 were the two best Van Halen shows that I saw out of the three.
Eat 'Em and Smile, where they're chasing each other around, the bass, Billy Sheehan and Steve Vai running around, and it was epic.
As opposed to 5150, which was basically the next Sammy Hagar album. And
basically,
and Eddie's playing on a Sammy Hagar album for some reason. But anyways, I digress. So basically, and we'll talk about this a little bit very soon here. But Dave had an uncle, Manny Roth, who owned a nightclub in New York, the Cafe Wah. And this is Greenwich City nightclub, and that's probably where I bet it was his uncle who turned him on to Al Jolson and all the vaudeville stuff.
Hendrix played at Cafe Wah.
Yes, he did that a little bit later on after Al Jolson. Hendrix, Dylan, and Dave's there as a kid while all that shit's happening.
Wow,
hanging out with his and I'm sure that gave him the rock star buzz.
Oh my God, yeah.
Hardcore. He's like, oh, this is what I'm doing.
Just to see Hendrix. Holy shit, man.
Yeah. Dave's like, well, I can't sing. I can't play guitar, but I'll learn how to play guitar good enough, and I'll learn how to sing good enough.
Yeah.
And I'll be more entertaining than anybody else on the planet, and that'll push me over the edge. And that was his 3-point plan. You follow? And it worked.
Yeah.
So
just very motivational, where nothing, no matter, I'm sure someone said, dude, you're a corn nut. Get the hell out of here.
Eddie Van Halen said that when he first auditioned for Van Halen. That's exactly what they said. Mm-hmm. Did that stop him? No, of course not. Yeah. So, he was big. Elvis Presley was a big influence on him. Mick Jagger was a big influence. And then, of course, if you go back, get on YouTube and search Black Oak, Arkansas, and watch their front man, this cat named Jim Dandy, and you're going to see a hillbilly redneck version of David Lee Roth from the early to mid 70s before David Lee Roth was famous. And it's basically David Lee Roth's grandpa or David Lee Roth's dad, or if you thought David Lee Roth's dad was kind of like David Lee Roth, that'd be Jim Dandy.
It's a blatant ripoff. Dave did not hide it well at all.
Dave adopted his whole personality, basically a little bit of California, a little bit of Al Jolson, a little down home Midwest.
The white stretch pants and the whole thing. That was Dave.
And then a big dose of Jim Dandy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then soul, R&B, all that stuff. He really soaked that up at his high school, and funk music and the whole thing. And so, he's got this internal rhythm about him. Meanwhile, he's developing all that. And he had a manic personality already. His parents sent him to a psychiatrist for being hyperactive. He used to jump all over his room and jump around the house, and they called it monkey time. So because of
a bit of ADD,
Yeah. Oh, with Dave, you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he attended a horse ranch for troubled teens in his teenage years. He worked as a hospital as an orderly too, and he talks about that, just being exposed to the death and the illness and tragedy, and how that gave him some perspective on life, like live life to the fullest and all that. So basically, he ends up Pasadena City College, where he meets the Van Halen brothers, and they have a band. And then we covered this in the Van Halen episode, but we'll touch on it again a little bit here. They have a band called Mammoth, and he wants to be the singer. And Eddie was singing at the time. It was a power trio with Mark Stone on bass, and so he's over at Eddie and Alex's house, and Eddie's like, well, let's see if you can sing. Hit this note. And he hits a note on the piano, and Dave tries to sing the note, doesn't come anywhere close. And they're like, yeah, no, we're good.
Yeah, that's rough.
So Dave starts his own band called Red Ball Jet, which was the name of a popular line of sneakers at the time. And Red Ball Jet is basically this R&B vaudeville. It's probably very similar to Dave's Crazy from the Heat kind of solo act kind of shtick. And it's got some funk and some little bit of rock and roll. And he finds out Mammoth is playing a festival at a local city park, and he gets the job opening for them. And they have no idea. This is just some neighbor of theirs who they rejected as their lead singer. So they're there. They get there for their gig. The Van Halen brothers do, and they're settling in to watch the opening act, this band called Red Ball Jet, who they've never heard of. And out from behind the speakers jumps Diamond David Lee Roth.
He's Diamond Dave, yeah.
Just like,
they had to be like, Jesus Christ.
You thought I was going away? No way, Jose.
And it would suck for like the bass player of Red Ball Jet to be like, yeah, I used to, okay. I need a.
Can I get my fries, please?
God damn it.
Well, the bass player for Van Halen, same thing, Mark Stone. I'm sure he's had that moment many times. So Mammoth is like this jam band. They're kind of like Cream or the Groundhogs, maybe a little bit like the Allman Brothers, just these long jams. Contemporarily, Earthless is a band that comes to mind, just long jams, which is great. I love that genre, as long as it's not hippie jam band, just rock jam band. I can dig.
Can't do it. Yeah.
And so that's kind of what Mammoth was. Dave's dad was rich, bought him a PA system. Nobody had a PA system at the time. So Mammoth used to rent Dave's PA system. And they still wanted to find a lead singer. And finally, they were like, look, this guy seems to be doing okay with this band he started. He's got a PA. Let's make him the singer. We don't have to pay him for the PA anymore. So he gets in Van Halen, and then he starts working on their music. He's like, these 20-minute Cream covers are great, but we need more chicks at the gigs. We need stuff people can dance to.
Well, Eddie prided himself on being able to play whatever song exactly like the record. So,
yeah,
they're priding themselves on look how intricate we're playing, and the crowd's standing there asleep.
Well, there's probably some music
so
nuts smoking joints, nodding their head.
Yeah,
but Dave wanted crowds full of chicks dancing, basically.
Yeah,
and so he starts helping them craft songwriting. Dave, one thing about Dave, he gets interested in something, and he will master it. He's a master martial arts swordsman. He's done thousands of hours on that. He got interested in playing guitar. I think it was like in the 90s or the 2000s. Went and took jazz guitar lessons. That's so that he could just play jazz guitar for an hour at a coffee shop, and entertain. Whatever he puts his mind. And so he had been obsessed with the craft of songwriting since he was a kid, listening to those Al Jolson albums, and he knew his stuff. And basically he took this musical virtuosity and this great riff writing. Eddie could naturally write great riffs and help them craft these great pop rock songs. Let's bring it down to 3.5 minutes and put in a little bridge with a little shuck and jive, And
I always think they modeled the band really after that first Montrose record, just in that it's real meaty riffs and great vocals. Just a good rock record.
It's Montrose sprinkled with a little Santana, a little Al Jolson. Big Bad Bill of Sweet William now is total old school jazz. They throw in these acoustic numbers. What's the Lonely Ships Upon the Women and Children First?
Women and Children First, yeah.
Yeah. So
Could This Be Magic?
Could This Be Magic? Yeah, that's what it is. And so better save the women and children first. It's just a potpourri, as you will, of amazingly diverse influences packed into one very energetic 3.5-minute song. He said Jamie's Crying was a Latin salsa beat. And if you listen to it, boom, 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 it is. And so there's a lot more going on there than meets the eye.
Yeah.
So there's a great book on that. If you go back to the Van Halen episode on the website, we link Van Halen Rising by Greg Renoff. Talks about the whole early pre-record deal era Van Halen.
And that's a crucial record book to read.
Yeah.
Because you just get the entire early roots of it. How he shaped their whole stage presence, everything.
It's also filled with hilarious stories. I mean, it's probably one of the top 3 most entertaining rock bios I've ever read. It's just hilarious stories.
Yeah, the girl that decides to have a party in her backyard and Van Halen plays and they trash the house and flip cars over.
They had police helicopters overhead. They threw some insane parties.
All at that one girl's party, and you're like, oh my God.
They opened for UFO and Mike, and they're an unknown, unsigned band. And Michael Schenker gets so freaked out by Eddie's playing that he's kicking over his amp and hiding in the dressing room afterwards.
Yeah.
And the lead singer comes over to Dave and goes, "Hey man, your guitarist messed with the mind of Michael Schenker. That's really not cool."
Gotta be like, fuck you. Fuck off.
I know, but could you? Nobody played like that. And could you imagine some local California bar band opens for you, and you're Michael Schenker. You're the top guitar hero of the day.
And this guy comes out.
And this kid comes out, unknown kid comes out and blows you off the fucking stage.
And good. That's what you need, man.
Oh, a little kick in the ass never hurt
Yeah.
anybody.
Mm-mm.
So then they get signed. We all know the whole story of their stint with Van Halen. Go back and listen to our Van Halen episode. The book that you want to read about that era, when the first iteration of Van Halen was publicly known and releasing records and touring, Van Halen 1 through the album 1984 and then the breakup in 85, is Running with the Devil by Noel Monk, who was their manager. Great book. You read Van Halen Rising and Running with the Devil, you've got the complete history of Van Halen up through 1985. It's great. Before they got abducted by aliens and came back in 2007 for the tour.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing that happened, and again, I'm not going to get into all that. Go listen to the Van Halen episode. Like I mentioned, I saw them. I was lucky to see them on their last tour with the original backing band. You know, Eddie and Michael and Alex. 1984 tour. It was an amazing show, and the one thing of note that happened during this era that we didn't talk about in the Van Halen episode was Dave develops a friendship with Henry Rollins. So Dave was this rich rock star, but he was always looking for where the party was at. If you watch if you read The Dirt by Motley Crue or watch the movie version, they're an unknown punk gutter metal band playing on the Sunset Strip, and he's showing up at their apartment for the parties.
Yeah.
And this is like fair warnings out. He's huge, you know. And
Yeah, he's just going where the chicks are.
Well, it wasn't just. I don't think it was just the chicks. He could get all that he needed. He needed an edge. Dave has been to the edge, stood there and looked down.
He did.
And he constantly is doing that, as you'll see as we unfold his life story here. You follow? You dig? And so he's at this punk. There's this underground art gallery where all these punk rock kids hang out. And he went to some opening there because that's where the party was at. Mm-hmm. And he recognizes Henry Rollins because he's always following the Van Halen brothers. Probably had no idea who Black Flag was, but Dave did. And this is covered, I think, in Henry Rollins' book, Get in the Van. I think that's where I read it. I'm pretty sure I read it from
that sounds familiar. That sounds
Henry's perspective. But Dave comes up and he's, Black Flag, right? He's like, yeah, you know who we are? And he's like, yeah, man. So he's rapping with Henry Rollins. At some point, Dave grabs some girl and goes into the bathroom to do coke with her. And the police raid the joint because the cops hated the punk rockers. They hated the punks. And the cops come and raid this, a gathering of punks, dangerous stuff. You know, this is probably 1982 or something. And they come raid the party. And I guess the girl told Henry Rollins about this later. I'm not sure how it happened, but Dave's in there doing coke with this girl in the bathroom, and here's the cops break in, and he dumps the coke out the bathroom window, and then just pulls a hat down over his head, collar up, and slinks out the front door. While he didn't look like a punk rocker, so the cops
he looked like an adult as far as they were.
Yeah, cops are busting the punks, so Dave dumps his coke and slips out the door. But that friendship with Henry Rollins lasted, I think, probably till this day. He'll pop up a couple times more in this episode. But so basically, Dave releases "Crazy" from the Heat EP. I remember when that came out. I went out and got that immediately.
Oh yeah,
and he's still technically in Van Halen. What were you going to say?
Well, there was a single of Just a Gigolo, I Ain't Got Nobody.
Yeah.
And you heard that, and I was like, I immediately thought of Young Frankenstein because I believe they sing I Ain't Got Nobody in there. The guy that played Igor was singing that. And so I knew of it.
Right.
And then Putting on the Ritz was a huge song around that time. So kids our age had been introduced to that whole vaudeville music thing.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a huge splash of cold water or something
I went out.
came out.
Yeah. It was different, but you weren't surprised because
Yeah,
you got a taste
that's what
of
I'm
it
saying.
with Big Bad Bill on Diver Down. And
Mhm.
any interview with Dave, he's always talking about Al Jolson and all these cats. So when that single dropped, you were like, okay, Dave's really doing it now. And he's still technically in Van Halen when Crazy from the
Yeah,
Heat comes out. He's actually working on the film script for a movie called Crazy from the Heat. And he had the balls, according to Noah Monk's book and Running with the Devil, to ask, first of all, he didn't tell the Van Halen cats he's working on this EP. And then they find out after he's well into it.
mhm.
And they're very, that band is a very tight fist. They don't do side projects really. The reason why Michael Anthony got excommunicated from Van Halen was because he was touring with Sammy after Sammy left the band. And
Yeah.
so the Dave going out and doing solo stuff didn't sit well with Eddie. And then on top of that, he's like, "Hey Eddie, I'm going to do a movie too. Why don't you write the music for it?"
Yeah, and Eddie's like, "Go fuck yourself."
Yeah, basically. So he's still in Van Halen when that comes out. He gets this deal with CBS Films to make a film called Crazy from the Heat. And the script was written. We have the script. We found it on the internet a few years ago. We're going to link it from the Click Pit. We have differing opinions. I think it's fucking hilarious. Silky thinks it's
I found it
too stupid.
scattered.
Yeah.
I was trying to like follow it like chronologically or it cohesively tell a story, and it may have transferred better to film, but reading the script, it just seemed like it was going everywhere and not
It's really silly, and
yeah.
Dave's playing himself, and he's got a sleazy manager, and he's going to tropical islands, and all kinds of crazy shit happening. But I just remember being really entertained, and Silky was like, this is kind of stupid. But you cats can judge for yourself. You follow? Because we're going to put it on.
I'll tell you this. I'm very glad
website.
I got to read it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely something that we, if you're a fan of any of that time frame or Dave in general, you want to be able to have read that or know what he was going to do. It was all they talked about. Crazy from the Heat is going to be a movie. The Van Halen's going to be in it.
Yeah. Basically got to the point of being storyboarded. They had all the storyboards mocked up for every single shot in the movie. They were hiring the crew, and CBS Films had some kind of structural reorganization, and whoever got put in charge of the department where Dave's film was shut it down.
Yeah, so, wasn't that on like TriStar or one of those that folded, or
CBS Films?
CBS Films, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, so it basically it was this close to being made, and I really wish it would have been made. I would have loved to have seen that, especially now that I've read the script.
Yeah, it would be a cult. It would be you'd have it on DVD.
It'd be a little cult.
It'd be a cult classic.
It'd be like a Where the Buffalo Roam kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I still think it's not too late. And if Dave's listening to this, which we have billions of listeners. You should just see the number. I'm not even going to tell you because it'll blow your mind, but
yeah,
billions of listeners for each. So the odds are Dave's probably listening to this episode. And if he is, here's my idea, Dave. You produce the movie, you get Michael Starr from Steel Panther to play David Lee Roth.
Oh, there you go.
And you make the movie. It'd be hilarious. That cat's a little mini Dave. So,
and then chock full just good rock and roll
Yeah.
soundtrack. I could see it.
Yep. Anyways, so the film gets shut down. Uh, things disintegrate with Van Halen. He decides to do a solo career. Van Halen decides to, let's see, Eddie and Alex, they take Michael with them. They decide to become Sammy's backing band and make more Sammy Hagar albums. Dave decides to keep making Van Halen albums. So he gets Steve Vai, Billy Sheehan, and Greg Bissonette. Three just what's the word?
Stellar musicians.
Virtuosos, yeah.
Yeah.
And he crafts this classic album, Eat 'em and Smile, you dig? And it fucking rocks. And
yeah,
so
it was amazingly good. And there was a series of videos that came out of that that were just ground. Everybody talked about those videos.
Yep. And it was a great show. I saw that at the Omni. It was like the last year I saw Dave with his previous backing band. Now I'm seeing him with this backing band, just as good. And
yeah, I saw that in Maryland. That was a phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a great show, and
but I still remember Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan chasing each other around the stage and stuff.
They had like a dual solo, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
they're both soloing. Yeah, it was like a dual, because Billy Sheehan's basically a lead guitarist who plays the bass with all four fingers. The guy's a maniac.
Yeah, he's a monster. Yeah.
Anyways, and the funny thing is, I read about him in some metal magazine. He was in a band called Talus. And I went out and found that Talus album. It was on some indie metal label.
That's not that
because it had this a couple years earlier, had this amazing bass player named Billy Sheehan on it. And there was a song on there called Shy Boy on the Talus album. Mm-hmm. And when I get Eat 'em and Smile, I'm like, oh, they took that Talus song. And of course, the credits said arranged by David Lee Roth, because he's got to get some kind of credit. It was basically the same song. But
did it sound exactly the same?
Yeah, basically, except Dave was singing.
I always thought Dave made it more energetic or something.
He didn't arrange anything. He just wrote that he arranged it. Gotcha. That was my perception. Go find it yourself, and
I'll check it out.
Anyways, Eat 'em and Smile goes double platinum. Very successful album. He does his tour. Let's take a look at the track listing for Eat 'em and Smile real quick and go down
So Eat 'em and Smile, you had the lead off single, Yankee Rose. When that came out that summer of '86, you were just lit. It was so catchy. And Steve Vai had come from Frank Zappa, but we weren't massively into Frank Zappa. I did know who he was, but I didn't realize Vai was from Zappa. But Yankee Rose was just a beast.
I had all that little talking, squawking thing that Steve Vai did. Wah, wah, wah. Crazy stuff.
And then, so Yankee Rose, Shy Boy, I'm Easy, really great tune. Ladies Night in Buffalo, Going Crazy. Tobacco Road, which is really a Edgar Winter tune. But a ton of people have done Tobacco Road.
It's a classic old 60s tune. Classic.
Yeah. Elephant Gun, Big Trouble, Bump and Grind, and That's Life, a classic Sinatra song.
And that's the thing. You listen to Dave, you're constantly getting exposed to all this other stuff. I remember getting into Sinatra because of this album.
Mm-hmm.
I had my Al Jolson Greatest Hits album, and this comes out, and I get into Sinatra because of this. Classic stuff. It's just a real rocking album. So, So anything else about Eat 'em and Smile before we move
Yeah.
on?
Billy Sheehan had read in an article that over half the Mexican population between the ages of 18 and 27. And so he recommended to Roth that they recut the entire album and all of his vocals with a Spanish tutor in the studio.
Did they replay everything, or he just re-sang? I'm guessing he probably just re-sang everything.
I believe they probably had everything worked out.
Yeah.
It may just be the same music and the vocals, but
there's a Spanish version of that album on Spotify. Yeah,
they do feel different. Just the pacing, and because it's in Spanish, the music's
right.
good. So I wonder if they didn't recut the whole
Let
thing.
me ask perplexity.ai and see if we can get an answer live via the wonders of artificial intelligence. Does the Spanish version?
Oh, I'm reading it right now. The basic music tracks are the same, with the only exception being Big Trouble, which ends abruptly as opposed to fading out on the English version.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, I've listened to that Spanish version once, I think, just for the funk of it.
I tracked it down to have it on CD just because it's so just humorous.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but I didn't include it in the playlist.
It's just I like when I'm marathoning Dave, I don't listen. It's just the same song, yeah. But it's fun to just give it a one-off listen. It's on, you can find it on Spotify. Go to Dave's channel on Spotify.
Yeah, the Hispanic version of Shy Boy is really good. And Going Crazy, those are good.
He says on an interview with Joe Rogan, he's like, I know enough Spanish to get us halfway there and halfway out. So he knows a little bit of Spanish, but so then Skyscraper comes out. Skyscraper. So Eat 'em and Smile is basically it's probably the closest to Fair Warning and Van Halen 1 of that era. Like, Diver Downs got some really good mellow stuff like Secrets.
That's great.
And
Cathedral and all that.
Yeah, Cathedral. And it's got some rocking stuff. And 1984 is rocking, but it's got a little bit of a sheen. Hey, what's up? El Condor in the house.
El Condor.
Hey, tell these lazy bastards to go buy the merch.
Merch. We got mugs. We got shirts. We got pajamas, maybe.
Wow.
We got figures, maybe.
We got whatever you want. Just
action. Yeah, we got Snags and Silky action figures. Go check it out.
Pull the cord, and you
have no idea what's gonna happen.
Sorry, I'm just getting some stuff.
Okay.
All right, El Condor. Checks in the mail.
Yeah.
All right. So so basically, Eat 'em and Smile, for all of its variety, is a really heavy album. And it's harkening back a little bit to Fair Warning and Van Halen 1, and just a heavy-hitting rocking album. And with Skyscraper, he starts to lighten it up a little bit, experiment. He gets a keyboard player in there. It's not like just shameless sellout garbage like 5150, but it's still Dave, and it's still good songwriting, but he's mellowing it out a little bit, and he's trying some different styles. And basically, Billy Sheehan, at the end of he's on the record, but after the recording's done, he's like, you know what? This isn't me. I don't want to, I'm going to go do something else. And he goes and ends up joining that band, Mr. Big, right?
Horrible.
That has one hit.
I couldn't even tell you, but just awful.
Yeah. Just a little trivia note. Mr. Big is named after a Bad Company song. Is it Bad Company or Free? I think
Free.
A Free song that has a really killer bass line.
Yeah,
So
that's on Fire and Water, that
yeah,
third free record.
yeah, we should do a Paul Rogers episode at some point.
That'd be a free company.
Yeah, free company. That's what we'll call it. Yeah, we'll do it. But anyways, he goes off and does that. Dave gets Greg Bissonet's brother to play bass for the tour. They head out on the road, and the stage show for this tour was crazy. They had and I didn't see this tour, but they had Dave rigged up on a surfboard that flies over the crowd. They had this boxing ring that comes down in the middle of the crowd, and he's in there emceeing or whatever. And they notched the stage show up a bit. This album also went double platinum, just like Living in Paradise was a hit. I started getting off the train a little bit here because just like I like it now. I'll listen to this album now and I'm fine with it. But at the time, it just wasn't as rocking. And I felt like for inexplicable reasons I'll never understand. Van Hagar became hugely popular, and I felt like Dave was kind of leaning in their direction a little bit with some keyboard.
The barbs were still going back and forth. I don't understand why the 4 records with Sammy were just so popular, because I knew people and I'm like, how can you? It was like an affront to the David Lee Roth years.
Well, it was just more Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar made one good album, and that was the first Montrose album.
Yeah.
And then he had some.
All of Sammy's solo stuff is actually Sammy has done 26 records.
Yeah, and they all suck.
Various bands and stuff, and most of them are. I mean, he's got like 3 Lock Box, and here
heavy
and there.
metal, 3 Lock Box. I Can't Drive. He's got a few rockin' songs.
I don't mind the Chicken Foot record.
I couldn't get through it. It was
there's
boring.
not. Yeah, there's. It's hit or miss. It's too hit or miss. But when you watch Sammy do an interview, I love to hear him. I'd love to know him, but
yeah, he's a nice guy, but let's not make this about
stuff. And Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy. Take that and throw it in the trash.
Yeah. So basically, I felt like Dave was leaning a little too much in that direction. Now I can listen to that album and it's perfectly fine. I'll marathon all the Dave stuff because he didn't actually do it. He didn't go full 5150. So in retrospect, I'm fine with it. At the time, I was like, "Ooh, he's going off the cliff."
Well, it's weird. I think music was shifting to different degrees. In retrospect, you can put Dave on now, and he knew what he was doing, but no one else did, and so it was very easy to read into, because A Little Ain't Enough and Your Filthy Little Mouth. Those records came out and nobody cared. Everybody was into the Spin Doctors and the grunge thing.
We'll talk about those. A Little Ain't Enough went gold. And then really what happened was Nirvana came along and nobody cared about Your Filthy Little Mouth because Dave was not cool.
It literally, I was working at Tower at the time and it came out and we're like, oh man, new Dave. And then it was clearance drilled.
Right. They drill the hole in it and put a sticker on it.
They were no longer available. It was already, to me, it was the first album I ever witnessed come out. And a week later, it's out of print.
Like then the cutout bin, yeah.
And I still have my copy of the CD because I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's David Lee Roth.
Yeah, but on Skyscraper, there's some good songs. Knuckle Bones is good. I actually like like Paradise Now. Damn Good is a good song. Hot Dog in a Shake. There's some good stuff on here. He gets musically experimental with some more funky melodies and stuff. It's not all.
Yeah, this is a real spacey, ethereal thing, which I likened it to him being up in the thinner air, climbing the side of a mountain, where he thought some of this was gonna really sell to the Van Halen fan
Well,
base.
he also makes music for himself, so he can get
Yeah.
weird, and we'll get to some of the more weirder stuff with
Yeah.
some of these later albums, but because he likes it. It's what Dave wants to do, you know?
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that. What's funny is California Girls and Just a Gigolo uh, from the Heat EP are on some CD re-releases in Europe. So you could track down a European version of Skyscraper, and it's going to have 2 extra tracks on it, which is just weird, but whatever.
So yeah, this is 1991, A Little Ain't Enough, 1990, A Little Late, no, I'm sorry, 1991, beginning of 91, A Little Ain't Enough comes out, right?
Mhm.
Nirvana has not hit the airwaves yet. And for those of you who weren't alive back then or were too young to know, Nirvana hitting the airwaves was a gigantic seismic shift in the culture.
Yeah, Bleach
That-
had come out, but they weren't they
no,
were
I'm talking about when Nirvana hit the airwaves, which
yeah,
was never mind.
Teen Spirit, yeah.
Yeah. So A Little Ain't Enough, again, it's got Sensible Shoes as a funky little Dave song, Dogtown Shuffle, Drop in the Bucket. Um, the song A Little Ain't Enough is good.
Mhm.
It's got a lot of funky stuff, but it's Dave being more mellow and funky, and it's a little bit more kind of mellow rock and roll. He's getting older and he's mellowing out, and he's getting a little bit more. I think you see more of his vaudeville jazz influence in some of this stuff.
I
Um,
think this is the tour that we caught him at, Masquerade.
no, it was, dude,
No?
it was not 1990. That was, I think it was,
94 maybe? I was
uh,
still at Tower.
yeah, it probably was 94. Yeah,
Okay.
94. So that's the next album. Well, one thing that happened between these two albums. So A Little Ain't Enough comes out in 91, and then in 93, Dave gets arrested in New York City's Washington Square Park for
Really embarrassing.
buying $10 worth of what he called bunk Jamaican reefer off an undercover cop.
Yeah, that sucks, man.
So that was kind of a punchline for a while, you know. And meanwhile, Van Hagar's selling out arenas and stuff, and Dave's getting busted in Central Park.
Yeah, and you were like, "Holy to get busted for a $10 bag."
Yeah,
You
it's
think the
just
cop would have been like, "Dave, get out of here." You know?
right. Now he's like, "Where do the boys of the precinct see who I busted tonight?"
Yeah, and then it's all over the news, and you're just like,
Yeah,
"Oh my god." It was just embarrassing for him, you know?
right. So a little ain't enough goes gold, while the previous two albums went double platinum. Nirvana comes out and just demolishes any
Everything.
band that
Yeah.
has anything to do with like hair metal. Just
Yeah,
gets
they were like
demolished.
Godzilla, just come in and smash everything, you know?
Yeah. Now, he's really making, so 94, Your Filthy Little Mouth, he's really making music for himself at this point.
Yeah, I think he gave up trying to please anybody. I'm just gonna make something I can be proud of, which is great, because in hindsight, these are really good albums. They're underrated. I don't think a lot of people.
It's a fun listen.
Yeah,
I rock my Dave playlist a couple times a year, you know, when
yeah,
I want to hear some Van Halen, but I don't want to hear Running with the Devil for the millionth time.
right.
Um,
She's My Machine. I love that song.
and this album has a mixture of jazz fusion, dance music, country, reggae, R&B, big band, blues. Yeah,
The
She's
whole
My
bag.
Machine. Everybody's Got the Monkey. That's a funky song.
Yeah, that
Everybody's
one.
got the monkey.
Big
Um,
Train.
Your Filthy Little Mouth. Nightlife. Yeah, and then it's got this you're breathing it, which is like this dance remix thing, you know, industrial, you know, got the drum machines in the background. He's just doing everything on this album. It's Dave, it's classic Dave, but it's also he's getting really, really eclectic. And you can see why this one didn't even go gold, really, because he's got the classic rock stigma, kind of 80s rock stigma. Really, Van Halen was classic rock. They don't fit in with Poison and Def Leppard and Motley Crue or any of those guys. They were a classic rock. They were the last classic rock band that came along right at the end of the 70s. And so they didn't really deserve that hair metal stigma that they got during the grunge era, but they got it anyways.
Right.
So that album comes out. Not a lot of people are tuning. I was totally tuned out at this point. I think that is the tour where we saw Dave at Masquerade. So we go to see Dave at Masquerade, Your Filthy Little Mouth tour. It's exactly 10 years after I saw him on the 1984 tour. Although that album came out in 94. That's probably when we saw him. And I just remember being shocked. First, it was just weird seeing Dave in the Masquerade. So those of you who don't know, the Masquerade is like a little club / music hall.
Maybe 200 people.
A few hundred people standing there facing a stage. And here comes Dave doing his shucking and jiving, and the way he's acting on stage, he's playing a stadium.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's talking.
How are you doing out here tonight?
All the people here tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's doing the split kicks and stuff, but he's getting a little older, so he can't quite do. And I don't know if he took steroids when he was younger, he worked out when he's younger, but he's basically lost a little bit of weight. He's just he's getting middle age. Hair's starting to recede a little bit.
Thin, and he was starting to look like Sting a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little bit shocking and jarring because I remember the Dave from the 2 Van Halen shows I saw. Right?
Sure.
You follow? You dig? So then 1995, Dave decides he's going to do a lounge act in Vegas, which is a natural fit for Dave. And
yeah, I'm amazed he never just did a standards record, all those old
just
tunes. It would have been great.
It's not too late, Dave, if you're listening.
Nah, I think he's retired.
No, he's still dropping tunes on Spotify and YouTube.
One-offs, yeah.
Dave, it's not too late. Do the standard record. So he basically gets a band together, a big brass band. It's got Nile Rodgers. Edgar Winter was in that band.
A lot of these guys were on that first EP.
And he's got members of Miami Sound Machine, which
that's weird.
I'm not sure what that was, like a funk band or something.
Yeah, it's the Turn the Beat Around.
Okay. Well, anyways, that's who was in that Las Vegas review band. Had a bunch of exotic dancers, basically some strippers were in there in that show too. And I remember hearing Dave, I think it was an interview. This was an audio because I can distinctly remember Henry Rollins' voice, but it's like a audio interview. And he's talking about how he runs into Dave somewhere and he said, "Dave, what you been up to?" And he goes, "Well, Henry, here's the deal. I'm doing a Vegas show. I'm going to go to Vegas and do a whole Vegas review." And Henry was like, "Oh man, I would totally come see that." And Dave's like, "I'll remember to put you on the guest list." And so apparently Henry Rollins went up and saw that. 1997 is when the book Crazy from the Heat comes out. And again, this was basically, it's a 359-page book that was selected from 1,200 pages of monologues that were recorded and transcribed by a Princeton University graduate. He followed David Lee Roth around for almost a year, just recording Dave talking about his life. And as far as putting the book together, it's rumored that Henry Rollins had a lot to do with it. So helped him put the book together and stuff.
That's cool.
So then 1996, what happened? Tell me what happened, Silky, in 1996.
96. You got me.
I can tell you what happened was
Okay.
Van Halen. They're putting together.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell the people what happened there, and I'll chime in.
So the Van Halen brothers decide to do a volume 1 greatest hit thing, and they mentioned to Dave about maybe coming in and doing 2 new songs. Dave, having come from a $10 drug bust and the album's not doing it's like
Vegas review.
He probably rolled up everything he owned in a car. All right, man, we're getting the band back together. This is gonna be great. I'm gonna Mike, I'm gonna need you to stand there. Eddie, I need you to actually come up here, move that over there. And they're like, whoa, what the fuck? Easy, brother. We're just doing 2 songs. No, that's not gonna work. We need to do a whole album. We're gonna do a tour.
Right.
I need to go to Australia. I'll be back. I gotta get some. And they're like, bro, what the fuck?
That's basically the vibe that went down. So basically what happens is they're putting out this greatest hits album of the Roth years. And somewhere I read they were up for a record contract renewal. And things had just basically recently gone south with Sammy. So Sammy's had left the band. They're up for a record contract renewal. And they're like, let's get Roth to come back and do a couple songs on this greatest hits album. The record company will get their hopes up. Meanwhile, they'd already secured there's this cat named Mitch Malloy they were jamming with. Look that up. He was in Van Halen for 1 second. And then their new manager also managed Extreme, and he basically lobbied to get Gary Sharon the gig. And Gary says
I have successfully never heard a note from the Gary Sharon stuff. I did listen to the very last song on that record because Eddie sings on it, and it's just so schmaltzy. I couldn't even get through it.
I've listened to the whole album once. It's no better than the Van Hagar stuff. I've listened to all the Van Hagar stuff. So if you guys think we're bitching without having given it a chance, you're wrong. We both.
Yeah, I mean, I can go to each of those albums in my house right now.
Yeah,
but you're not going to come home and put on OU 812. Why?
Yeah,
that's to me that'd be like putting the Monkees on. Why?
Journey.
Why are you listening to the Monkees?
Why are you playing a Loverboy album? What's
other music?
Loverboy's opening for Sammy on his current tour. That's all you need to know right there. It's that kind of music.
They're selling it as "Bring Your Dad." I'm like, what?
Yeah. Anyways,
come on, man.
Anyways, so, So part of it was to get the record company, even though they knew they were probably going to go with Gary Sharon, they bring Dave in and string him along to get the record company's hopes up so they can get the contract renewal. They also wanted to sell. They wanted this greatest hits album to sell a bunch of albums. So let's get people thinking maybe Dave's coming back in the band.
And that's what we all thought. They interrupted the Grammys that year. Tupac introduced them on stage, I think,
I think it was the Video Music Awards.
And Beck was gonna accept an award, and Dave's out there just doing sidekicks and Robot Man and shit, and Eddie's just like the wounds had not healed, so they were.
And I think Michael and Anthony's trying to say something in the microphone, and Dave cuts him off, and he upstages Beck, and apparently backstage, Eddie was having hip troubles and either was about to get a hip replacement. Yeah, he needed a hip replacement.
He's talking about hip surgery. Yeah,
he's complaining about his hip, and Dave says, "Tonight's about me, not your fucking hip." Great way to get yourself back in the grace.
Yeah, it really sucks. It's as if it's like when a bear splashes the water to get the fish.
Yeah.
He just came on way too strong. We really could have had 3 or 4 more
Van Halen. Although
legit Van
they
Halen
weren't going to hire him anyways, but it would have been nice if
It really would.
if all that had gone perfectly, then maybe
Yeah, if
they
if
could have
not,
been talked into
yeah, if he had not been just an
a
uber
jackass.
jackass.
Dave can be a jackass sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, but that's the there's two things there. That's the Ritalin, the hyperactive mentality, and just you slip back into old ways of maybe he talked down to Michael Anthony because he always looked at Michael Anthony's putts, and he just
Yeah,
that's what he would do. Um, but I actually liked the two songs they did, and
I did not.
maybe it's because I pounced thinking, okay, this we're gonna have a whole album
Right.
now, and Dave does his normal kind of stringing words together thing in Me Wise Magic, and I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna go somewhere, and it didn't, and then I know Van Halen did the Twister soundtrack that had come out. That was like the big movie. The Humans Beings with Sammy. It was actually one of the only Sammy Hagar Van Hagar songs I like.
So, Me Wise Magic was actually a hit. That song charted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, I didn't like either of them, but that one was a hit. And then in the Crazy from the Heat book, Roth talks about this that because Crazy from the Heat came out in 97 and all this happened in 96. So this is right after all this went down. He says that after the awards show, when they're walking out of the building, Alex is egging him on to do crazy stuff. He's like, "Hey, Dave, go jump on the hood of that limo over there," And he felt like Alex was trying to get him to make even more of a jackass out of himself just for his own
Right.
entertainment. It
That's
wasn't very cool. Then apparently, and this is
it's telling though. It's like, dude, you just embarrassed yourself, and it's a shame that it didn't work out.
apparently, and this is according to Wikipedia. I just learned this now, studying up for this episode. In 2001, they actually got back together and recorded some songs with Michael Anthony, Alex Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, and David Lee Roth. This is after Sharon left the band, and that
Right.
Van Halen 3 travesty didn't work out.
Exhaling is what we called it.
Yeah. The one good thing about Sharon, if you go on YouTube and look up like Mean Streets Gary Sharon, when they did the Roth songs on that tour, and Sammy, because he's a dick, always had a rule they could only do 3 Roth songs at any concert, and the rest of it had to be his terrible songwriting.
Right.
And so when they're rehearsing for the Van Halen 3 tour, they asked Gary Sharon, they're like, "Okay, what 3 songs do you want to do, that weren't on this album?" And Gary's like, "What? What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, Sammy would only do 3 songs that he wasn't on the record, that he didn't sing on the record. So what 3 songs?" And he was like, "Dude, it's like I love the Roth era. Let's do as many of those as you want."
Right.
And they did. If you go watch those shows, and you can forward through the Van Hagar and the Van Halen 3 stuff. When they do the Roth stuff with Gary Sharon on vocals, it's killer. It's like Ripper Owens doing
he can sing,
Oh, yeah.
I don't like that poppy bullshit. But.
No, I don't either. But it's like Ripper Owens doing Judas Priest stuff. It's really, really good. I remember finding some of that on YouTube. It was Mean Street with guitar intro, and then they kick into it, and they hadn't sounded like that in years, man.
Wow.
It was
that makes me think of the Tony Martin stuff with Sabbath. They have a Cross Purposes live record where Tony Martin's actually singing a lot of Ozzy and Dio stuff in there, and that live album is actually very listenable because it's Sabbath live. It's heavy guitar. It's really good. The studio stuff with Tony Martin is so watered down and keyboard heavy that it's like a Sears commercial or something.
It's like the elevator music you hear in a Sears elevator.
Yeah, just you're like, what is this? Why is and these Sabbath heads just it's Tony and Sabbath.
I know.
No.
There's some people that live in their mom's basement who just
they just and they want to fight about it. You're like, dude,
judgment
I
is warped.
care, man.
Anyway, so 2001, the original band actually got back together and they recorded some songs, and then for whatever reason it didn't work out, but some of those songs were used on A Different Kind of Truth 11 years later when they did that album. Dave goes back to his solo career, basically 97. Aside from that little 2001 blip, he's doing his solo career, continuing his solo career, 97 to 2007. That Crazy from the Heat book came out. Then 1998, he forms his own record label. What was that? We were talking about this previously before we started recording the podcast, and Silky's like, I don't know. And I said, no, what was that? And Silky's like, I don't know. And I'm like, that was the name of the record label.
It's the only record that he did on the label, too.
Yeah. And it's called the DLR Band, and it is a return to form. And it's not on Spotify. It used to be on Spotify, but it's not now for some reason. But we're going to link it from the Click Pit because you can still find it on YouTube. Go listen to that album. If you like Van Halen 1, Fair Warning, Eat 'Em and Smile, you'll love DLR Band. It's just John 5 is on there on guitar.
John 5, Mike Hartman.
Yeah, it's just it's a killer album. Looks like you're reading up on it. Hit us with some details on that one, Silky.
Mike Hartman and Terry Kilgore play guitar on that with Lowry. Lowry actually plays bass on Bourbon Bob, which is a pseudonym that he had. And then Ray Luzier, later a full member of Korn. So, and John 5 went off. But two of the tracks from this album, King of the Hill and Indeed I Do, would later end up on Mike Hartman's solo record, Black Glue. They were titled Southern Romp and Stomp, and they're instrumental. So you'll recognize, if you're familiar with the DLR Band and you get this Mark Hartman thing, you'll recognize those songs. But this is always referred to as the Betty Page album. Love this record.
Betty Page on the cover.
Yeah. Just nothing more Americana, if you think about it, than Betty Page and the American flag.
Yeah, it's basically American flag with Betty Page in front of it, and it says DLR Band. It's and it's just back to back Hard Rock Attack. I mean, there's just there's
a lot of songs that should have been Eddie.
Let's do a mellow calypso song. There's none of that. It's Dave's bringing it back into just rock and roll. Lose the Dress, Keep the Shoes, King of the Hill. What was that? Weekend with the Babysitter. It's just it's a good album. It's just rocks all the way through.
Right Fool for the Job is great.
Yeah. Dave's lyrics are hilarious,
Yeah. He's got his sense of humor fully intact on this one.
Yeah. So highly recommend DLR Band. Anything else about that album before we move on to?
No. So in 2001, I'm living in California, and the radio station comes on. It's one of those spur of the moment things where you happen to be there when the announcement comes on the radio. I was a courier at the time, so I'm in my truck, and the radio comes on and says, let's say it's May, and the radio comes on and says, June 10th at the San Jose Arena, Bad Company is coming with the original lineup, and I'm like, oh my god! So I immediately jump on my radio and get the dispatcher named Mike, who I was buds with, and I said, Mike,
wait, is this Rabid Mike or a different Mike?
different Mike.
Okay,
This is like 24 years ago.
got it. Okay.
So I said, hey, Bad Company's coming to San Jose in June. He's like, dude, let's go. So I said, I'm right across the street from whatever record store. I'll go in and see if I can get tickets right now, because they said they're on sale. So I go in, and nobody, this is just weird. It's Bad Company with Paul Rogers. Nobody is pouncing on these tickets. They just went on sale. The radio just announced it. And I literally popped the truck in park. I was in a parking spot, but I was about to leave, delivering something. And so I run over there and I buy 2 tickets. They were like $20 a piece, something ridiculous, right down front. And so I got these Bad Company tickets. I'm like, this is going to be, because I had seen a San Jose Sharks game, hockey, at the arena. So I knew, I'm like, that's a, it's kind of like the Omni.
Yeah. Phillips Arena these days.
Yeah, Phillips Arena. So I get back to the shop, and he gives me money for his ticket, and that a month goes by, we go down there, and we're in the arena waiting, and I'm like, who do you think's opening for Bad Company?
Oh my god,
I have no idea. And I'm like, we're really close. I hope that somebody good. Otherwise, I'm gonna go.
It's like the festival where the Van Halen brothers were at, waiting for the band to open.
Yeah. So the lights go down. Out comes Dave with a
jumps out from behind the speakers.
Yeah, he comes out with a Van Halen cover band. The lead guitarist has the patchwork pants from the Fair Warning era.
Really?
Yeah, big heavy set bass play. They were literally a Van Halen cover band that Dave saw or whatever and took them on tour with Bad Company.
That's hilarious.
He played mostly Fair Warning stuff, and which was just, but I'm like, holy, you had no warning at all that it was going to be Dave.
That's awesome.
Here's Dave. The only I'll never forget, it was all Van Halen songs, and he did Yankee Rose and Just Like Paradise. Yeah. But everything else was the Van Halen stuff.
Right.
And a lot of songs. I think there's 9 songs on Fair Warning. He did 7 songs from that out. It was like mostly, and the guitar player with his hair down and those pants, you're like, it's fucking Eddie. His guitar was like Frankenstein. It was all, it was phenomenal. And then, of course, Bad Company was great. But that was the last time I caught Dave live.
That's wild. That's a great story. I like that one. Yeah. So 2002, he releases, he created this video called David Lee Roth's No Holds Barbecue. I forget where I found out about this.
He has a greatest hits package, and the second disc, I had to drop some money on this, like $30, but the second disc is a DVD of Dave TV, the Dave barbecue, and videos from the different solo records. To have that DVD is just worth getting. The greatest hits CD is kind of, you could piece all that together now, but that DVD was really cool to have.
I remember hearing somebody, it was some podcast I was listening to, and that somebody brought that up and said, oh my God, you haven't seen David Lee Roth's No Holds Barbecue? Look it up on YouTube. It is some trippy shit. And it's literally 1 hour of just all this crazy footage that Dave was shooting at his house with his bandmates at parties,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's just this 1 hour montage, and there's some great cover tunes in there.
Yeah.
There's a Steely Dan tune that he covers, that he just released on YouTube with an animation. Baker Street, I think. Is
Right.
that
Baker
Steely
Street.
Dan?
No,
And
that's Gary Rafferty.
dude, with that sax
Yeah,
line.
that's Gary
Or,
Rafferty.
okay, well,
Steely Dan is awful, and no one should listen to them. Go ahead.
Baker Street. I think that it sounds like I always thought that song was Steely Dan because it sounds like
It's
this
Jerry Rafferty.
jazzy rock. Okay.
Jerry Rafferty.
Anyways, he does an acoustic version of Mean Street, which he also just released on YouTube recently. But there's some other. I think there's some Beatles covers in there. There's a lot of wild music in there that you can't find anywhere else. But you have to sit through the whole David Lee Roth No Holds Barbecue, whereas there's a lot of shucking and jiving and him mugging with chicks in bikinis, and I just put it on, and I kind of was surfing my phone and sipping a beer, and it's just kind of like you're at a party for an hour with David Lee Roth. It's totally
Yeah.
worth watching. We're of
Yeah.
course going to link it from the Click Pit. You got to see it. There's nothing else like it. But 2002 is when that was made, and then I'm not sure when it was eventually leaked
Well,
out to
the
the public.
Diamond Dave came out in 03, summer of 03.
So yeah, so then the album Diamond Dave comes out, and I was looking at the track listing, and I think that might be the closest you're going to get, Silky, to your Standards album, because there's a lot of covers on that album.
Yeah, he does like 3 Savoy Brown things. Steve Miller, a Doors song, a great version of Soul Kitchen, Hendrix.
Yeah.
And
he does Tomorrow Never Knows, which is a killer version of Tomorrow Never Knows as well.
Yeah.
He calls it that Beatles song, that Beatles tune, but it's Tomorrow Never Knows.
Yeah.
He covers. He does he does a different version of Ice Cream Man on there. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's getting eclectic again. Thug pop. Some of this stuff is verging on industrial. You got John 5 on Thug pop. John 5 was all over the previous album as far as songwriting credits go, but he's only co-wrote Thug pop on this one.
Yeah.
But
so I'm looking at that greatest hits I was just mentioning. So the first 9 songs on the DVD are all videos from the different records, and then it just has Dave TV, which was a big MTV thing, and interviews. Right. And so then there's snippets in between with him in a club with some model with him, and he's in between each thing. Which
I really think that the David Lee Roth No Holds Barbecue is
that's not this.
I think you can only find it on YouTube because it's this thing he recorded, and it was going to be a VHS release. It might have been a limited VHS release at some point, but it's unlike anything. You just got to go watch it.
Yeah,
it's Dave.
I thought it was what I had, and I was like,
it's an hour of living in Dave's head and Dave's world, and it's really, and there's some just great music in there. Him just doing songs with some cat with a stand-up bass, and it's just crazy shit. And I remember watching it, going, "My God, this is a great cover tune. Why didn't he just release this on a record?" Now he's dripping some of it out on YouTube.
There's the thing about Dave is there was a Van Halen tribute that was all acoustic and some
bluegrass.
Really bluegrass.
Yeah, Strumming with the Devil.
That's it. And phenomenal performances. And Dave sits in and does a couple with some of these people. And it's like, good God, like you just like he was a joke in the 90s to a lot of people. And I love that he's just done his thing, and he's so influential where he does not say whatever you want. I'm over here. I'm going forward. I did it my way,
Yeah,
And,
totally. Totally.
and you can rip him up and your filthy little mouth is a terrible record, straight to the bargain bin. So what? There's only
Next,
one David Lee Roth.
moving on and singing my song.
Yeah, he's
So-
just full steam ahead. You either get him or you don't. And that's we should all, because too many of us hold on to, they don't like me. I'm all and you can't live that way.
Absolutely not.
You're letting them win.
That's right. You mentioned that he was a joke in the 90s, and there's a great satire of the joke version of David Lee Roth. I think the guy's a genius, on par with Eddie Van Halen, especially after reading Crazy from the Heat. The man's mind is he's got an amazing mind. But
I have the book, and I'm actually just going to power read all day tomorrow.
Yeah, you won't have to put in much effort. It'll grab you by the throat and just rip you right into the story.
It's I can already tell it's one of those books that'll read itself.
Yeah.
I wish I had read up on it, but time
as I said in our text convo about that, you and I know Dave. It's fine.
Oh yeah.
So
Dave and I went to different schools together years ago.
So eventually I'm going to get to be able to say this, but so the joke version of David Lee Roth is summed up really nicely in the character Dr. Roxo from Metalocalypse. So if you ever watch Metalocalypse, there's a character, Dr. Roxo, the rock and roll clown, and he's always doing cocaine constantly. And it's funny because I remember when I was first watching that series, I've watched most of it, and I was like, is this supposed to be David Lee Roth? I'm not really sure. And then they had a sequence where he's playing a song with his band, and it was a total Van Halen song. Like they were mimicking Eddie Van Halen riffs, and I was like, oh, this is definitely supposed to be David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
It's fucking hilarious. But that's how in the 90s, that's how everybody viewed him, was like this clown.
And they joked Dio too. Dio was washed up, and
a lot of those guys, and they stuck it out and they continued making good shit after all those other guys had died. So,
right. Yeah. So who
all right, y'all are all dead now. Let's bust out Bible Black and fucking
holy Christ.
Out of Space and some jamming tunes. So anyways, let's see here. Oh, I lost my place in my notes. Oh, I forgot the lyrics. Where are we here?
2003, the last solo record.
Right. And also 2002, one other thing that happened in 2002 was the Heavyweight Champs of Rock and Roll tour, which was David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar.
Sam and Dave.
The Sam and Dave tour. They were touring together, and they'd alternate headlining, each night. And that was apparently a disaster. Like,
there was I knew people that saw the Dave opened, and they were so happy because that meant they could see Dave and leave.
Yeah, right. That's totally what I would have done.
Hell yeah, we'll be home at 9:30.
That's great. Yeah.
And they were ecstatic about that.
And apparently, like, Sammy was real gregarious, like, Dave, come on backstage, let's party afterwards. And Dave just didn't want anything to do with Sammy. He would just go in his dressing room and
that sucks,
shut the door. Yeah. Sammy, every time I see an interview with Sammy, I get duped into giving his music another chance because he's such a nice guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I do the same thing. Like, I actually was going to put together a complete Sammy with the idea that as I went along, I would delete anything I hated.
And you end up deleting everything.
I feel like I'm going to just slowly delete.
Yeah. Anyways, so, and I remember hearing, I think it was Michael Anthony saying, because Anthony is Sammy's bass player at this point when they're doing that tour. And Michael Anthony,
that shit.
Yeah. Michael Anthony is backstage in Dave's dressing room. He's one of the few people that Dave would let in.
Yeah, I'm sure.
and he's just ripping Dave a new one for fucking up the 1996 appearance. Just going, man, we could have, and probably the 2001 thing, whatever happened there. Just we could have been back, man, and you fucked it up. And Dave apparently was just looking down, going, I know.
Yeah, God, I mean, he probably did a massive amount of Krell, and then just went in there and just,
For the uninitiated, Krell is what the Van Halen cats called cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine.
Cocaine.
Yeah, that's it's a shame. I do like that Dave went and studied Japanese, the writing on the rice paper, this crazy artwork that has accompanied a lot of Dave's artwork. He'll do these
later on. Yeah, it's like after Van Halen get back together later on in the timeline, he moves to Japan. But before that, he was after the Sam and Dave tour. He works for a while as a EMT in New York City, an emergency medical technician. 2006, he and that's like you're wondering. He says he was doing it, working as an EMT, because it gave him perspective on life. But you have to kind of half wonder, well, also.
It's weird, though.
You couldn't find a Van Halen tribute band to tour with, you needed some money. Maybe
that's a hell of a thing to go and do. Eddie Munster was an EMT.
Billy Mummy was an EMT?
No, Eddie Munster.
Yeah, Billy Mummy.
No, Billy Mummy was the kid from Lost in Space.
Oh. Who was Eddie Munster?
Eddie Munster. It doesn't matter. I know it's not.
I'm just gonna call him Billy Mummy then.
Okay. Anyway. Billy Mummy was Will Robinson.
Whatever, same thing. Kids from 60s shows. So he was an EMT for a while.
Yeah. I mean, he after just went on to be an EMT. He was,
Dave said. I've heard Dave interviewed about this period, and he says he would be on these emergency calls, and someone's about to die, and they're looking at him, and they're like, "Wait a minute, are you?"
Yeah, that'd be weird. That would get in the way of some things, but
that'd be totally weird.
I've always wanted to meet. Well, I don't have a hand. Can you shake this hand?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
So, little after 2006, Howard Stern leaves NBC Radio. And to go get his own channel on Sirius XM, right? And where he can say whatever he wants. He's not going to get hassled by the FCC anymore. And they tap a few people to replace him. And they're trying different people. I think is like on the West Coast, it was Adam Carolla. And on the East Coast, it was David Lee Roth. And I remember that. I would listen to him, driving to work.
Right.
And that didn't work out. That he just not the kind of guy. He was having to get up at 4:30 in the morning to go do this morning show.
Dave
and that's usually when he goes to bed.
Yeah. Fuck
and they wanted him to do just they were micromanaging him, and he's like, "Hey man, let me go to Cowabunga and record live, talking to the Zulu tribes or whatever." He wanted to do all kinds of crazy shit, and they were like. No, you're going to show up in the office, in the studio, and you're going to read the weather.
Yeah, you're going to fucking do what we tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
So that didn't last long. But luckily, right after that, he gets a call from Wolfgang Van Halen, who's been jamming with his uncle and his dad.
Yeah.
And he says, "We need a singer." And this time it stuck. And they go do a 2007 tour. They make like $94 million, so they're back in the bling, and I'm sure it was divided 3 ways, and Wolfgang got a little stipend. And I went to that tour. Now they did a tour in 2007. I missed that one.
That's the one I saw because I didn't see them after that.
Okay, well, I get a call from you or an email or a text saying, "Hey, man, check out the new Van Halen album." This is like 2012,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'd heard Tattoo, and I was like, "Oh, it's more Me Wise Magic kind of shit." I
Uh-huh.
just wasn't into it, and you're like, "No, listen to the rest of it
Yeah.
now."
Oh,
And so I
that was
did,
something else.
and it was blew my fucking mind. A Different Kind of Truth, once you delete Tattoo from the playlist, is an
Yeah.
amazing, flawless album.
Yeah.
It's
When you
really,
buy
really
the
good.
album, you literally just remove Tattoo from the record.
Right.
You
And
know.
we did not cover that album in the Van Halen episode because it wasn't on Spotify at the time, and we were dropping songs at the time. So let's go down the track listing for A Different Kind of Truth.
Oh, Different Kind of Truth. And a lot of these songs were from the demos back in '76.
Yeah, She's the Woman was an old school Van Halen
Yeah.
tune. Yeah.
Big Trouble.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
But again, once you delete Tattoo from the track listing, we'll just pretend it doesn't exist. It's just all these songs are flawless. She's a Woman, You and Your Blues, really bluesy song. Chinatown, rockin' song. Blood and Fire, rockin' song. Bullethead, rockin'
Bullethead.
song. Yeah, As Is a good one. Honey Baby Sweetie Doll is a good one.
Yeah.
That's the Trouble with Never. Good tune. Out of Space is my favorite. It's just
Stay
blazing.
Frosty is another. Stay Frosty was what I was.
Can I finish talking about Out of Space though? Is
Sorry.
a blazing, just rocking song. It's an amazing guitar riff.
Yeah.
Great lyrics. It's really back to Fair Warning style.
Mm-hmm.
Take it away with Stay Frosty, Ol Silky.
Stay Frosty is just Dave's entire shtick, melted down to 2 words: Stay Frosty. I almost called the playlist Stay Frosty, but I was like, well, that's a Van Halen record. This is Dave. The interesting about A Different Kind of Truth to me is I feel like it's a David Lee Roth solo album.
It's got that, yeah.
With Van Halen playing, it's not quite. It's just more, and again, Dave may not be able to sing the way he did 20 years ago. So you do get more of a Dave off the cuff kind of
rapping. Dave's rapping about shit. But I want to hear what Dave's rapping about,
It's just great. It's such a good record. I'm glad it's back. There was a deluxe edition DVD that has them in the studio. They do acoustic Panama, You and Your Blues, with a great intro. Dave just riffing, and then Beautiful Girls.
So I went and saw that tour, right? So that album comes out. You convinced me, okay, they really are back. I listened to that album. I was like, holy shit. And I listened to that constantly that year. I remember just driving to work, listening to it almost every day. Mm-hmm. And I had it on a streaming platform so I could delete Tattoo, which was perfect.
Very important to do.
Yes. And so I see they're coming to the Phillips Arena. And I'm like, holy shit. I look it up. I get back of the floor. It's not on the floor. It's like right at the back of the floor section for $90, which that's how much you're paying these days. That's a bargain now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I go, and I remember when I was walking in there, there's this cat on the corner, just some brother hanging out on the steps, and said, hey man, who's a lot of people coming in here? Who's playing tonight? And I was like, Van Halen with Kool and the Gang. Because Dave had seen Kool and the Gang at some festival and was like, man, these guys still bring it. And that's the thing. Sammy Van Hagar tours, you would never have some wacky opening act.
No.
Because Dave was always the guy bringing that stuff in.
Yeah.
So this was Van Halen with fucking one of the best funk bands from the 70s.
Kool and the Gang opened for them?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And so I'm walking in and his brothers ask me, "Oh man, a lot of people coming in here. Who's playing tonight?" And I was like, "Van Halen with Cool and the Gang opening." And he stops. He looks kind of surprised and he goes, "That's a good show."
That's crazy, dude. That is fucking crazy.
It was great, man. Cool and the
See, and
Gang.
I'm down in Florida, so I not that
Yeah,
never.
Florida man.
God.
So Cool and the Gang, yeah, they brought it, man. It was a funk fest. It was right, and so Van Halen's got to live up to that. That's why Dave would bring those kind of cats in on these tours, and they did live up to it. It was a great show. And they did a live album after that, which is okay. Dave's singing live, and it's kind of like, I remember listening to James. It was live audio from Metallica's 30th anniversary celebration.
Oh yeah,
and
at the
yeah, James is
Warfield.
singing every night, and he's just you can't get the best of each take and piece it together. James Hetfield's another one of those singers. He's not Dio. Probably Jason Newsted can sing better than James Hetfield, but
Newsted's a hell of a singer. I don't
and
know.
Michael Anthony can sing better than David Lee Roth, but they're the guys who come up with the lyrics and bring the persona. Yeah. But the live album, live from the Tokyo Dome, I think.
Yeah. And it's a great live record. It's a shame we're not getting live
back
at the US Festival or some shit, but
I would love a double live album
back in the day
from the original era. Yeah, it'd be great. But no.
Goddamn shame.
You can find full concerts from that era. I remember watching it. It wasn't
fine.
Yeah, it wasn't US Festival, but it was like it was the Diver Down tour.
Yeah.
And my God, dude, they were on fire.
Oh yeah. Nobody could touch that. In that 81, 82, the Stones, and I don't know. I don't know who would have out. Van Halen was their own thing. They were
right.
They were just ridiculous.
So Dave, Van Halen, they did their last tour in 2015. I think their last show ever was at the Hollywood Bowl in 2015. And then they go on a hiatus. Turns out Eddie has been sick, and Eddie passes away, and Van Halen breaks up.
2020 was
that was a rough. I literally drove home blasting Van Halen 1, tears streaming down my face.
Oh, I was a mess. It just sucked. Yeah. The ones that really hit me was when Neil Peart died. I was just like, what the fuck? And then Eddie, Lemmy, obviously. I mean, our Lord and Savior.
Well, you have BL era and the AL era. We're in the after Lemmy. It's a totally different era.
It really is. All the Ramones are gone.
The world is so fucked up right now because Lemmy died. He was obviously holding all that shit together.
I think he really was. The Ramones gone. It's bullshit.
All right. So in Van Halen breaks up because Eddie passed away. In 2020, Dave announces he's going to do some more shows in Las Vegas. I think it was at the Hard Rock Cafe, and they're releasing these shows on YouTube, and they're all right. I watched a couple of them. The first show was a bit rusty. He had a young band, and it was exactly like you said with the opening for Bad Company. Basically, it was all Van Halen tunes except for like Yankee Rose and like Paradise. Yeah, maybe one other, from those first two albums. So he does a few of those, and then he goes on tour opening for Kiss on the End of the Road tour.
And that didn't last long.
No, it didn't last long. Basically, COVID came along pretty quick right after that.
Pandemic
shut that whole thing down. Gene felt like Dave was a bit past his prime anyways, and that's funny coming from Gene, since Kiss was
Right.
like 20 years past their prime when they were
Oh
doing
my
that
God.
tour, lip syncing songs.
Gene
But
lumbering around with a battle axe.
yeah.
Uh,
So 2021, Dave announces his retirement from performing, and then he's continued to release singles and little music video things on YouTube and on Spotify.
Battling with Wolfgang.
Yeah, battling with Wolfgang on social media. On one of the songs on there that he's released, Ashley Abernathy. I always wondered what that was about, and apparently that was
Yeah,
written.
she had leukemia, and he actually recorded that like back in 07, I think, but it didn't get released.
99. Yeah.
Oh, in
He
99.
he recorded that for a 9-year-old girl named Ashley Abernathy back in 1999 and gave it to her. And so
Okay.
she had it and she could hear it, but it didn't get released until recently. I always wondered what that was about. That's an
It was
interesting song.
one of those Make-A-Wish Foundation things.
Yeah.
And she loved David Lee Roth. She loved Van Halen, and he did that. That's actually on Spotify. I didn't put it in the playlist because it's kind of very personal. It's just not something you bebop to in the car.
Right. But there's some songs on there on Spotify that are about the Van Halen years and about the I think this is one about the Rainbow Bar and Grill, I think.
That is farewell to Eddie there.
Yeah, yeah. So I
think.
mean, there's some good tunes on there. His recent stuff is worth listening to. I've got it all on my personal rock
There's a
playlist.
couple songs though that are not in there. One's about a plastic chair that's just a real groovy acoustic thing.
Oh,
But
is
he's
that on YouTube?
it would be, yeah.
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 See,
It's
check his
it's got a really long drawn out name about a resin thermonuclear resin plastic chair.
right.
Something like that.
So you can check his YouTube channel. As far as his personal life goes, he says he's had 4 great loves of his life. If you listen to the song Secrets off of Diver Down, that was most certainly about one of them. But I think that he had this image of this swinging bachelor thing. And there was a while there where, and I've read that somewhere else in the classic Van Halen years, where he actually had a really serious girlfriend, but they didn't
Really?
publicize it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it might have been Apollonia from the whole Prince scene,
Oh wow.
because he was very serious with her in the 80s. So Secrets might even been about her.
Wow. See, she was a straight up hoe. She's
Yeah.
because she was with somebody else too.
Well, I doubt it was exclusive. This is David Lee Roth we're talking about.
Somebody I almost want to say Nikki Sixx, but I could be wrong. I don't remember.
I don't know, but at some point he was dating her pretty seriously. It was pretty serious. And then the 3 other girls who shall remain anonymous. And then he moved, like you were saying earlier, he moves to Tokyo and starts studying martial arts. And in that, there's a Joe Rogan interview from 2013, and he had recently done that. And
Well, I mean, he was into martial arts all the way back, but he really got into the whole culture. I had mentioned earlier was this artwork stuff, and he's actually done covers for each of the songs that are posted. You see these really intricate
and animations too. He does animations on his YouTube channel.
I would love to have a collection of that. It's the artwork is so it's just very cool to look at.
And he studied with some Japanese sword master, and he basically still has a residence. He's got residences in New York, LA, and Tokyo, and he's still, and as you were saying, studied the calligraphy. He's big into the whole martial arts thing. So
he's
interesting cat.
I think he's 75. I think he's 75.
Is he?
Now, yeah, something like that.
Let's check Wiki and see how old Dave is as of the recording of this.
Old codger.
David Lee Roth. Hold on. As of this recording, David Lee Roth is 69. I think,
Oh, that's it?
yeah, 75 is more like, well, I
thought
guess, yeah. He's 69. So he's still a young cat.
Yeah, he could certainly put out a few albums still, but I think he's done.
Now, I think he's obviously sitting on a pile of money, and he just does little one-off things for fun and slaps them on YouTube and Spotify.
Yeah,
That's what he does now.
I do like that they're just instantly, hey, here, he's not trying to make any money off of them. It would be nice if they were all collected into something. There's a couple that I know of that are not in the streaming bit that I have, through the internet. But
one other thing he did recently that didn't work is he sunk $7 million into a company. I think one of his Joe Rogan interviews, he's pimping this, but it's like this product that you rub it on your tattoos and it makes them last longer.
Yeah, it's silly.
Someone talked him into sinking $7 million, and that company's already out of business. So if he'd just given me one of those millions of dollars, it would have changed my life forever.
Oh, dude, I'd take 20 grand from him.
Yeah, just give me 20. Come on, Dave, hook us up.
Yeah,
go buy a bunch of merch, Dave. Come on, you can do it.
Yeah. It's what are you gonna do?
But that's David Lee Roth. Kids, hope you learned something tonight.
Diamond Dave, just stellar, very influential, and just always so positive. Everything's just a very nonstop, bright attitude. You and your blues is like sums it all up on that Different Kind of Truth record.
You and your blues hit the fucking road. I got a party to go to.
Yeah. And I know on davidleeroth.com, you can actually look at a lot of his art. There's a lot of really, really intricate stuff here on his website.
davidleeroth.com. Check it out.
Yeah. There's literally a section where you can look at all his artwork.
Cool. Well, we'll link that in the click pit in the reads section since we don't have a website section. We'll put it in reads with a Crazy from the Heat book. So, all right. I think that's it. Are we ready to say peace out?
Yeah. Sounds good, man.
All right. Say it. You got to say it.
Oh, deuces, everybody.